Hello, dear audience. Today, we step into a story filled with emotions where love, rivalry, and inner turmoil intertwine. When a heart has already been given away, can it ever change? And when someone persistently pursues love, will they ever find true happiness? Let's delve into the story of Tien and Jack, and Tien. Three people, three destinies, but one journey. A silent battle, yet one filled with heartbreak and regret. Stay tuned, and let's explore together. The car rolled along the winding road leading to Tamamo, carrying three people, each with their own emotions. Jack sat in the back seat, his hand tightly clasping Tien's delicate fingers, as if wanting to declare to the world that she belonged to him. He didn't just hold her hand, he gently stroked it, occasionally tightening his grip, a silent yet unmistakable statement. Jack was well aware that Tien's presence in this car was no coincidence. The man sitting in the driver's seat, though trying to appear composed, couldn't hide the flicker of frustration in the rearview mirror. Jack knew Tien was annoyed, unsettled, and that was exactly what he wanted. He wanted Tien to see, to understand, that Tien was not someone up for contention. Casting a sideways glance at Tien, Jack smirked, his voice laced with provocation. "Thanks, Tien, for driving me." A seemingly casual remark, yet every word was heavy with meaning. It wasn't just gratitude, it was a statement. The one driving was merely a servant, while the one sitting in the back, hand in hand with Tien, was the true master of this game. Tien tightened his grip on the steering wheel, forcing himself to stay calm, but he couldn't leave it unanswered. His voice dropped, cool and sharp, like a blade. "I just want to make sure Tien is safe. If I have to be a driver, then I'll only be a driver for her." The atmosphere inside the car grew thick with tension, but Jack didn't care. He leaned slightly toward Tien, his eyes soft with affection, as if no third person existed between them. Every so often, he would gently tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear, or whisper words meant only for her. Each gesture was not just tenderness, but a declaration of dominance. Tien was his, and nothing would change that. Throughout the journey, Jack remained in complete control. As soon as the car arrived, he was the first to step out, quickly moving around to open the door for Tien before gently taking her hand and leading her toward their room. Tien followed behind in silence, his gaze heavy with unspoken thoughts. Though he and Jack had agreed to a fair competition, in reality, Jack always had the upper hand. Not only because he and Tien had endured countless trials to be together, but also because, in her heart, there was never room for anyone else but him. During dinner, Tien sat close to Jack without hesitation, leaving Tien alone on the other side of the table. She remained oblivious to the underlying tension between the two men, unaware of the silent battle being waged over her. Tien had stepped into this love story only because of a deep misunderstanding. He truly believed that Jack was a flirtatious, unfaithful man unworthy of Tien, and that very misunderstanding had led all three of them to this painful stalemate. Tien wanted to clear things up with Tien, but she didn't know where to begin. If she spoke too bluntly, she feared it would hurt him. She knew that Tien was a good man, caring, considerate, and always looking out for her. But love could not be forced. Her heart had never belonged to anyone else but Jack. Tamamo at night was shrouded in mist, the crisp air carrying a quiet chill, just enough to make one crave the warmth of a drink, or perhaps the comfort of a hand to hold. Inside the cozy restaurant, under the soft glow of golden lights, the three of them sat around the table. Yet, by some unspoken arrangement, Tien found himself utterly alone. Tien sat beside Jack, their closeness as natural as breathing, as if this had always been their rightful place. The warmth in their exchanged glances, the way Jack's hand would occasionally brush against hers, every gesture spoke volumes. He wasn't just touching her, he was reaffirming his presence, his claim. And across the table, Tien watched in silence, his heart growing heavier with every passing second. Tien was not an unreasonable man, nor was he the kind to fight for something that wasn't his. But he couldn't accept this not yet. His feelings for Tien weren't fleeting, weren't born from mere infatuation. He believed he understood her, that he cared for her in ways no one else did. More than anything, he wanted to protect her from the pain he feared would come, and the source of that pain, in his mind, was none other than Jack. Jack was far from oblivious to Tien's presence. He knew exactly what the man was thinking, what he was feeling, but he wasn't concerned, because if there was one thing Jack was certain of, it was that Tien's heart belonged to him. He had nothing to prove. Her love for him was already a given. Yet, Jack was not the kind of man to back down from a challenge. If Tien wanted to test his patience, then Jack would make sure he understood Tien was his, and nothing could change that. He didn't react to Tien's stares, nor did he make any grand gestures of possession. Instead, he simply poured a glass of wine for Tien, his movements effortless, his voice low and intimate as he murmured something into her ear. She laughed softly, her eyes crinkling with delight. Everything about his demeanor was casual, yet undeniably clear. Jack wasn't just beside her, he belonged beside her. Tien saw it all. He saw the way Jack took care of her, the way he subtly yet deliberately reminded him of his place. It was frustrating, it was infuriating, but it didn't shake Tien's resolve. If anything, it only strengthened it. Tien wasn't naive. She knew Tien had feelings for her, and she knew Jack had long since realized it too, but she never wanted to find herself at the center of a battle. She never wanted Tien to suffer because of her. She had to make things clear, but where could she even begin? Rejection was easy, rejecting someone who truly cared was not. Lifting her glass, she looked at Tien, her voice gentle yet firm. "Thank you, Tien. Thank you for everything you've done for me. I truly appreciate your kindness, and I hope that you can see me as a younger sister." Her words were soft, but they cut through Tien like a blade. His expression didn't change, but in that brief moment, his grip on the glass tightened, his breath faltered, but Tien was not one to surrender so easily. He took a slow sip, placed the glass back on the table, and finally spoke, his voice low yet carrying an undeniable weight. "Sometimes, what we see isn't always the truth. You should think carefully before saying yes to anything. As he spoke, his gaze landed squarely on Jack. For a long moment, their eyes locked. Neither man spoke another word, but between them, a silent battle raged. Tien still believed that Jack wasn't the right man for Tien. He was certain that, one day, she would see the truth. But would that day ever come? Or was it already too late? Jack, on the other hand, barely reacted. He simply smirked, as if Tien's words meant nothing to him. His grip on Tien's hand remained firm, a quiet but undeniable promise he wasn't letting go. And as for Tien, she only remained silent. Somehow, the night breeze of Tamamo felt colder than ever. Jack held Tien's hand, guiding her back to her room under the dim glow of the hotel corridor. The Tamamo wind slipped through the window panes, carrying a crisp chill that made her shiver slightly. Without hesitation, Jack pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her not just to warm her, but as if to reaffirm that she belonged to him, and nothing could change that. "Did you have a good time today?" Jack asked softly, his gaze warm and tender. Tien nodded, resting her head against his shoulder. "As long as you're with me, I'm happy anywhere." Her words pleased Jack. He tightened his grip on her hand, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. His warmth surrounded her, offering comfort and security. She didn't realize it, but there was something unmistakably possessive in his every gesture. Jack wasn't just holding her, he was making it clear that no one else had a place between them. After a while, Jack bid her good night and left the room. But as he closed the door behind him, the tenderness in his eyes faded. He had unfinished business. Back at the dining table, Tien still sat there, glass of wine in his hand, his gaze distant. When Jack returned, he showed no surprise, nor did he appear rushed. He had been expecting this. Jack pulled out a chair, poured himself a drink, and spoke. His voice devoid of the casual ease from earlier. "Tien, I think you understand everything now, don't you?" Tien didn't answer right away. He swirled the wine in his glass, lost in thought. "Understand what?" he asked calmly. Jack let out a faint smirk, setting his glass down before meeting Tien's eyes. "My place in Tien's heart. I won't beat around the bush. I hope you realize she was never meant for anyone but me." Tien chuckled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're confident, I'll give you that. But have you ever wondered, does Tien truly know who you are? She knows me enough to love me. That's all that matters." Jack's voice was steady, unwavering. Tien's gaze darkened, his tone carrying an unshakable conviction. "I don't believe you deserve her." For the briefest moment, Jack's expression hardened, but just as quickly, he regained his composure. "Whether I deserve her or not isn't for you to decide. She chose me, but I'm not giving up." Tien's eyes burned with quiet determination. The two men sat across from each other, neither willing to back down. A tense silence settled over the room. They both knew this battle wouldn't be settled with just a few words, and because of that, neither of them saw the need to say anything more. After a long pause, Jack was the first to stand. "Tien is waiting for me. Let's end this here." Tien said nothing, merely downing the rest of his drink in one motion. Without another word, the two men cleared the table, then walked off in opposite directions, each lost in his own thoughts. This war was far from over. It had only just begun. The next morning, golden sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft glow over Tamamo. The sky was clear, the air crisp and fresh, as if nature itself was determined to make their trip even more beautiful. But for Jack and Tien, today wasn't just another pleasant day, it was another battlefield, where their silent war continued. Jack had always held the upper hand. He understood Tien's feelings, understood his place in her heart. That was why he never needed to rush, never needed to fight desperately. As long as he was by her side, as long as he held her hand, Tien would never stand a chance, and that's exactly how it played out. As they walked along the winding roads of Tamamo, whenever they stopped to take pictures, Tien would subtly try to stand next to Tien, but Jack never let it happen. He always pulled her closer, or casually placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent declaration, "She is mine." Whether they were climbing the stone steps to the ancient church, or sipping coffee at a hilltop cafe overlooking the town, Jack's hand never left hers. Always close enough to make her feel safe. Always firm enough to make sure Tien understood there was no place for him. But then, the moment Tien had been waiting for arrived. As the afternoon faded, the three of them stood atop Tien Peak, watching the sunset. Jack's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then turned to Tien. "It's the board of directors. I need to take this. I'll be right back." He let go of her hand and walked away to take the call. Tien watched Jack's retreating figure before turning to Tien. For the first time all day, he had a moment alone with her. "Tien, there's something I need to say." She turned to him, surprise flickering in her eyes. "What is it?" Tien took a deep breath, as if gathering every ounce of courage he had. "I know you and Jack have been through a lot together, but I still can't stop loving you, and I can't stop believing that Jack isn't the right man for you." Tien shivered slightly. She had known, deep down, that this moment would come, but she had never wanted it to, because she never wanted to hurt him. Her voice was soft, gentle but firm. "Tien, I cherish your feelings, but my heart belongs only to Jack." Her words, as light as the evening breeze, sliced through Tien like a blade. He clenched his fists for a brief moment, then slowly released them, forcing a smile to mask the ache inside. At that moment, Jack returned. He didn't ask what had happened. One look at Tien's face was enough. He didn't need words. He simply reached for Tien's hand, holding it in front of Tien, making his final statement without speaking. Tien stood motionless, swallowing every unspoken emotion. Jack met his gaze, his voice calm but sharp. I hope you understand that Tien sees you as an older brother, so I hope you can see us as your younger sister and brother-in-law. Tien was silent. After a long pause, he let out a small smile, not one of happiness, but of resignation. The battle was over, and now it was time to let go.